How does $2 billion disappear without anyone noticing? Not regulators, not auditors, not investors. Because in Germany's biggest corporate scandal, the money was never real to begin with. Today we're diving into the absolutely wild story of Wirecard. This was the German tech company that was supposed to be Europe's answer to Silicon Valley, but it ended up being one of the biggest, most shocking corporate frauds in modern history. So picture this. It's June 18th, 2020. The auditors at EY drop an absolute bombshell, $2 billion. A full quarter of the company's entire value on paper was just gone. And look, this money wasn't just misplaced. It wasn't sitting in some bank account in the Philippines like the company had been claiming for years. It had vanished. As one person said, the money was just poof. So the real question we're digging into is, how in the world does $2 billion just disappear? Yeah, this is the story of how Germany's great tech hope, the company that was supposed to be a shining example of the digital future, turned out to be nothing more than a hollow house of cards. Something went really, really wrong here. You gotta love the branding, right? Wirecard was sold as Silicon Valley with a lederhosen. It was this perfect image of German engineering meeting tech disruption. But behind that clever tagline, the foundation wasn't built on innovation. Oh no, it was built on bad debt and this almost crazy belief that nobody would ever actually check the numbers. All right, so to really get what happened, we need to rewind. We're going all the way back to 1999, when Wirecard got its start in, well, let's just say the shadier corners of the early internet. You see, in its early days, Wirecard wasn't this glamorous tech company. Not at all. It was the essential, but kinda hidden plumbing for industries that weren't exactly mainstream. It processed payments for online gambling sites, adult entertainment, the kind of businesses that traditional banks wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. And then, in 2002, this guy, Markus Braun, takes over as CEO. And he had big plans. He wasn't content with just being the payment guy for the internet's back alleys. He had this grand vision to turn Wirecard into a global tech powerhouse. And Braun, he really played the part. He had the whole signature black turtleneck thing going, kinda like Steve Jobs or Elizabeth Holmes. He just projected this incredible confidence, a quiet self-assurance that made people believe he could pretty much bend reality to his will. And they bought it, hook, line, and sinker. Okay, so this is where things get really interesting. How did they manufacture this spectacular growth? I mean, the company went from a small-time operator to a global titan almost overnight. Well, it was all based on a pretty clever magic trick. Seriously, how does a company that got its start processing poker payments suddenly become worth over $25 billion? We're talking more valuable than Deutsche Bank. The answer lies in a brilliant but totally fraudulent scheme. I love this analogy. Think of their business model as a financial mullet. Business in the front, party in the back. Well, for Wirecard, it was respectable, kind of boring, banking up front in Europe, and a secret, totally fabricated operation in the back in Asia that was generating all these incredible fake profits. And the scam itself was almost laughably simple. It basically had 3 steps. First, Wirecard would just make up enormous profits from its supposed business in Asia. Second, whenever anyone asked, "Hey, where's the cash?" they'd say, "Oh, it's being held by our third-party acquirers over there because, licensing issues." But here's the kicker. The partners and the money, pure fiction, never existed. It was like selling your broken car to your dog, paying for it with your own money, and then booking a massive profit. It makes no sense. So the entire company, its stock price, its reputation, everything, was just this giant Jenga tower made of lies and leverage. Every new lie was another block they pulled from the bottom and stuck on top, making the whole thing more and more unstable, just waiting for a tiny push to send it all crashing down. So you'd think someone would have noticed this, right? Well, people did start to notice. Journalists started asking some really tough questions. But the reaction from the German authorities was, and I'm putting this mildly, completely baffling. They protected the company, not the public. I mean, we're talking way back in 2015. Reporters at the Financial Times were already on the case. They were publishing stories that questioned Wirecard's miraculous numbers. They could smell the smoke and were looking for the fire, asking that one simple question: where is the actual money? And this is where the story just enters this bizarre, upside-down world. While journalists were uncovering hard evidence of fraud, Germany's top financial regulator, BaFin, was doing the exact opposite of its job. They ignored whistleblowers. They launched a criminal investigation against the reporters, and they even banned investors from short-selling Wirecard stock. Instead of investigating the crime, they went after the messengers. It's just incredible. So let's move on to the final act, the Great Collapse. They'd been keeping that Jenga tower standing for years, but eventually you just can't defy gravity. In June of 2020, the game was finally over. After years of delays and questionable accounting, the auditors at EY finally refused to sign off on the books. They publicly admitted they couldn't find any proof that the $2 billion in question had ever existed. That hole was now public, and the whole Jenga tower came crashing down. The fallout was immediate. CEO Markus Braun resigned and was quickly arrested. But the chief operating officer, this really mysterious guy named Jan Marsalek, who some called the Batman of money, well, he had other plans. The speed of his escape is just stunning. I mean, look at this. June 18th, the news breaks. The very next day, he's fired. And by June 22nd, just 3 days later, he's a ghost. He performed one last magic trick and simply vanished, reportedly flying to Belarus and then on to Russia. To this day, he's still a fugitive. So why does this story matter beyond all the crazy corporate drama? Well, let's look at the very real consequences of this fraud and the crucial lesson we should all take away from it. The human cost here was just immense. Thousands of employees lost their jobs overnight. Countless investors, from huge funds to just regular people, saw their life savings just evaporate. And for Germany, it was a moment of national humiliation. A member of their prestigious DAX 30 index had collapsed in a massive storm of fraud. You know, if there is one single lesson to take away from Wirecard, it's this: extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. It's so simple. When a company's growth seems too good to be true, when its profits just defy all logic, we have to demand proof. We can't just put our blind faith in charismatic founders and slick marketing. The Wirecard story is such a stark reminder that the biggest risks are often hidden in plain sight. The next great corporate disaster probably won't look anything like the last one. It's going to look innovative, harmless, profitable, and absolutely inevitable, right up until the moment it all falls apart. The only question is, will we be asking the right questions next time?